What's that? I will. Yeah, thanks. I need a clock. I have my glasses today. Good. Okay. We're going to call to order the Narragansett Town Council regular meeting. Today is Monday, August 21st, 2023. The time is 7 p.m. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next we will move on to the approval of minutes. I have a motion to accept and place on file the minutes from the July 17th, 2023 regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain. I wasn't present.
Okay, motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 4 with 1 abstention. Next for announcement presentations, we have the town manager's update. Mr. Tierney?
Good evening, Council President, President Pro Tem, members of the Council, public who are here, and those of you who are at home. From the Fire Department, I received notification shortly after midnight on Friday night into Saturday morning that mutual aid operations were in the works for our fire crews and apparatus that were needed to assist the New Shoreham Volunteer Fire Department in fighting the blaze at the Harborside Inn. Narragansett FD responded with personnel, an engine, and our fireboat. Our neighboring communities and our staff staffed our stations during the event. There were no injuries reported. I'd like to thank the North Kingstown Fire Department, the Union Fire District, the South Kingstown and Jamestown Fire Department for providing coverage in the town of Narragansett, and the Coast Guard Point Judith and Interstate Navigation for their assistance. From the Police Department, one of our recruits has withdrawn from the Rhode Island Municipal Police Training Academy, and currently the list is exhausted. We'll be trying to fill a space in the January Academy through recruitment. From DPW, the town has a new DPW foreman, Mr. Jason Teolis. Jason's worked for the town for 16 years. The position became available, unfortunately, following the sudden, unexpected death of a beloved colleague of ours, DPW foreman Pete Russo. From Parks and Recreations, the Middlebridge Narrow River open space has been getting quite a bit of use. I've gone by multiple days during the week and on weekends and observed as many as 18 vehicles at the site on one weekend day. The PD reports they've had no requests for police service, and we've had no issues with litter or anything else at the site. Some council members asked for updates on some random updates on some items in the library. The $1.5 million advance to the library that was granted by the Town Council in February of 2022. 1.125 has already been paid back with a balance of $375,000, and the agreement cites a full repayment date of June 2025. The Municipal Technical Assistance Program grants focusing on affordable housing. The Town Council directed me to submit 2 pre-applications for the MTAP grants at the August 7th Town Council meeting. Both were submitted the following day on August 8th. The 2 that were requested were the Public Engagement and Education section and the Infrastructure Capacity Assessment. We have a follow-up meeting with the staff on this matter to submit the more formal application they are requesting. From the Clerk's Office, boards and commissioners for the Town Council appointed positions. There are we have a shortage of applicants, and you can apply through the town clerk's website if you are interested in serving the town on one of these boards and commissions. And that is about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tierney. Next up, we have the Water and Wastewater Enterprise Funds financial analysis presentation. Mr. Gearhart.
Good evening, council members and the public. As you're aware, the council approved a rate study for the Water and Wastewater Enterprise Funds earlier this year, and the project was awarded to New Gen Strategies and Solutions. They've collected data and information on both enterprise funds, and with that data information that we provided them, have performed a rate evaluation and study And the finance director and I have met with NewGen on several occasions to review the progress and portions of their study. And tonight, Mike Maker from NewGen Strategies and Solutions is here to present the findings.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good evening. So I'm going to look this way and point this that way, I suppose. So I have a brief presentation. If you have questions along the way, feel free to stop me. So some guiding principles and objective of the study. So the water and sewer enterprise funds should be financially self-supporting. They shouldn't be borrowing from the general fund. As enterprise funds, they should be paying their own way. The utilities should maintain reserves to provide for contingencies and unplanned expenses. Water and sewer rates should be kept as low as possible over time. And you'll see we have italicized over time there because you can defer maintenance, not invest in your infrastructure and have really low rates. But then sometime down the road, you can have a big issue if you have a main break or something like that. So the goal is to get them to steady, CPI or inflation-related increases over time. So our objective is to ensure rates are stable through sound financial management and system maintenance. And we do that by reviewing the funds and then preparing a long-term financial plan over the next several years. So some factors that affect water and sewer charges and rates. Your operating and maintenance expenses, these are your day-to-day expenses, your salaries, your benefits, materials. Some of the big ones for the town are obviously the purchase of water from Veolia and North Kingstown. So we've tied the escalation rate to what we expect to pay those municipalities in the future, as well as the regional plant sewage treatment expenses with South Kingstown. And then for other operating expenses, we're using an inflation rate of about 2.5%. That's been about what the CPI has been over the past 20 to 30 years. I know we've seen higher inflation earlier this year and last year, but hopefully those will get back to normal. Capital improvement plans are a really large expense, part of the revenue requirement or the cost to collect from customers. That's going to be investments in your treatment plant, your distribution pipes, your collection pipes, all the buried assets in the ground. Any debt service, so any existing principal and interest payments you're currently paying, and then any future debt service, so any capital projects that are planned to be debt funded. Any customer changes, we're being conservative here and saying there's no growth of the forecast period, so we're saying you're fairly built out. You may have a handful of customers here and there, but we don't want to assume that growth is going to come if it's not going to. And then the same thing on water usage and sewage generation. We're just being conservative here, saying no growth. And the same thing on miscellaneous charges. So that's things like interest, penalties. You have some assessment revenues from new customers. Those are actually dropping off over time as those assessment areas have been paid off. Then we have these two reserve targets. So just like you would have your checking fund or a rainy day fund in your savings account, we would recommend an operating reserve fund of at least 90 days of operating expenses. So that'd be about 25% of operating expenses kept into a rainy day reserve. And you'll see for the charts that we show, we actually have a 90-day, then what it would look like for a 180-day. And then on the capital side for your CIP, having a reserve balance equal to about 2% of your system value, which would equate to about a 50-year useful life of your assets. So the revenue requirement, that's just a term we call the revenue required to be collected from customers. It's really just the cost of the system. So you'll see at the bottom we have the operating and maintenance expenses. Again, that's day-to-day salaries, that purchase of water, benefits, materials, supplies, things like that. Add on top of that any outstanding debt, so any existing payments you're paying now, and then any planned capital projects, and those can either be cash funded, ideally they'd be grant funded if you can get that, that would be nice, or they could be debt funded as well, which then we turn into principal and interest payments, or reserve funded. And so then any contributions to reserves, which I talked about previously, kind of building those up to a healthy balance. So we add all that up, that's the revenue requirement. We list out any miscellaneous revenues, those things like assessments and interest, penalties, things like that. And that's what we need to collect from customers. So what this chart shows is just water, this snapshot. So we have the base year, fiscal year 23, and then the next 5 fiscal years. And so you can see these vertical bars representing the different colors, the operating expenses being in blue, and you can see as those grow with inflation over time. That gray color is the cash-funded capital projects, green being the capital reserve contribution, And then you see that bar going across horizontally, that's your current revenues. So anytime that line is lower than the vertical bars, that means you're running a shortfall. So you can see in '23, it was roughly breaking even because the line is about where the expenses are. But then as we add some of these capital projects, investments in the distribution system, you can see that the current revenue is not covering those expenses. The dark blue line that's kind of sloping up to the right, that would be our recommended revenue to collect. And you'll see a note at the bottom. That line represents a 5% increase in water and sewer, or water charges in '24 and '25, and then a 3% increase after that. So hopefully getting to more an inflationary increase after that. Turning to sewer. Oh, sorry, first the fund balance for water. So the blue vertical bars here is your operating fund balance. So right now, in end of '23, you have about $3.5 million in the water fund balance. And you can see we're planning on using some of that. So you can see that balance actually drops for '24 to help mitigate how much the rate increase needs to be. So using some funds there. And you can see these two different target cash on hand numbers. So the bottom horizontal dotted line in that orange color, that would be 90 days cash on hand. And then 180 days would be that lighter color above it. So you can see the water fund actually maintains both the 90 days and 180 days over the 5-year plan. So now turning to sewer. Again, here are the costs versus the current revenues and proposed revenues. So here you can see we're dealing with larger dollar amounts. Typically, sewer is more expensive to operate. You can see the blue here again being the operating expenses. Stacking on top of that, you do have some current debt service for the sewer fund. The gray being cash funded capital projects. The yellow actually representing some debt funding of new capital projects, so turning those into amortization schedule for principal and interest. And then again, that capital reserve contribution. The light blue line going across, that is current revenue. And here you can see in all years, it's actually less than the costs. So that essentially means there was a deficit in '23, and that deficit would continue. And then the recommended increase would be that sloping up dark blue line. And this actually represents a 21% increase in each 2024, 2025, and then hopefully getting back to inflationary increases after that, 3%. And we're actually starting with a lower cash balance on the sewer side. I believe it's only a couple $100,000 in '23. And we're really just trying to get to that 90-day cash balance by the end of the 5th year. So you'll see that last blue vertical tower just reaches that dotted line for 90 days. So we're not even at the 180 days, we're just getting to the 90 days on the sewer. So now turning to your current charges. So as you may know, you have an annual minimum charge for both water and sewer. So the annual minimum charge for water varies by meter size. So typically your residential customers are going to be that 5/8 inch, 3/4 inch. You might have a handful of 1 inches, but that's probably 95% of your customer base are going to have those smaller meter sizes. And you'll see that asterisk there. That includes a usage of 6,000 cubic feet per year. So you bill quarterly. So you have 6,000 cubic feet per year, but you could essentially, if you were a really heavy user, you could go through that 6,000 cubic feet in the first or second quarter, and then any usage after that falls to these variable tiers. So at the bottom there, you see these tiers per 100 cubic feet. So after you've used your 6,000, you then pay $2.92 per 100 cubic feet from 6,000 to 9,500 cubic feet, and then a higher rate for 9,500 to 13,000, and then yet another higher rate for over 13,000. And then turning to sewer, here your fixed charges are based per unit. So again, if you're a residential customer, you're really just going to have one unit. You pay $400 per quarter, or per year, and $100 per quarter. And then if you use over 8,000 cubic feet for sewage, you'll see that asterisk there. You would then start paying $275 from 8,000 to 20,000, and then from 20,000 to 30,000, $325, and then it actually drops back down to $275 for over 30,000. And then you'll see a note at the bottom. So right now, about 64% of water customers use less than that 6,000 cubic feet per year. So they never actually see those tiered rates. They stay within that $340 if they're on a 5/8 inch. And then 73% of sewer customers are at or below the 8,000 cubic feet. So we were calling, if you went over the minimum, we were calling that excess usage. So 64% of water customers, 73% of sewer customers have no excess usage. So then just projecting those forward based on the percentage increases I showed before. So water, I believe, was 5% for 24, 5% for 25, and then 3% thereafter. This is just applying those increases to the rates. So can you see how those would increase? And then the same thing on sewer. Now, in this case, these were 21% in 24, 21% in 25, and then 3% each year after that. And then we always say customers don't really care what the rates are. They want to know what their bill is going to be. So this is a comparison of a median bill. So the median user is a customer where half of customers use less than that amount and half of customers use more than that amount. So for a typical residential customer, they use about 1,100 cubic feet per quarter, so about 4,400 per year. We have two scenarios here. So a customer where they did not go over the excess, so in that case, they pay $85 for their water bill quarterly, $100 for their sewer bill, or $185 per quarter. That would go up to $210.25, so an increase of $25. This is a water and sewer bill combined. And then if they were an excess user, it would go from $247 to $280, or a $33 increase. And then comparing to some surrounding utilities or localities, the blue being water, the gray being sewer, and the dark blue and dark gray being the town. So you can see where you stand right now for FY 2023. You're the fourth lowest from the bottom there. And then with the increase in FY 24, you'd be about the middle of the pack. And again, this is for that median customer. So our recommendations are to adopt the recommended water and sewer rates for the next 5 years, fiscal year 24 through 28. Establish a fund balance policy based on those operating capital fund balance recommendations. And then, review charges and fees on an annual basis, and you can do this internally. So we have a financial model that we've given the town, and that we'll work with Chris and John on how to work with. But ideally, you'd go in, take your budget numbers, replace those with actuals, see, okay, how did it come out, and use that to adjust the increases that may be needed. And you really only need a full rate study maybe every 3 to 5 years, so not every year. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anyone from the council have questions? Councilor Kopech?
I have one, yes. So one of your recommendations is to establish a fund balance policy for operating and capital. You didn't give any particular advice on that subject?
Well, so the minimum balances that I offer, the 90 days, was really I'd say a minimum. That would be for the operating fund, and then the capital was the 2% of assets. And so in the model, it does show what those need to be and how to achieve those.
And you use that to calculate the total dollars?
And I would work with Chris on helping, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other council members? Thank you. I think Mr. Vangermeer, I'll let Mr. Vangermeer come up. He's been a proponent of this.
I'm Richard Vangermish with the Finance Committee. I don't see the Chairman, Mark Abrams, here, but he hopes to be here shortly. Now, government accounting is a mystery to most accountants. Very few of them know about it. I tried to teach it. Mark might have some ideas about my failings in teaching government accounting, but it is crucial. And one thing that has to be clear, enterprise funds are not a part of the property tax system. That the taxpayer chooses not to know most of the time. They will say, oh, you're raising taxes when you're really increasing a user fee. That must be understood. And we must also include depreciation in the cost figure. I'm assuming their reserve here reflects depreciation. We have had a serious cash drain the last 4 or 5 years. And this, as I said before to you, could be the start of a serious liquidity crisis. Cash is cash, while wastewater is not a part of our fund system, it's an enterprise fund. It does drain cash, and we can only drain cash so long. Cash is cash, whether it comes from wastewater, whether it comes from water, or whether it comes from the operating funds. Cash has been disappearing in this town, one reason being the problem we have with wastewater. Now, the problem is accentuated by 2 factors. The state requires a limited amount of increase, so we can't make up and fund the wastewater situation from our property taxes. We're limited to 4% a year, and inflation is much more than 4% a year. We are in an immense cash squeeze, and we've solved the problem by diminishing our cash balance. That isn't good for the long run, but we really need some tutorials on government accounting.
Thank you. Dr. Alba.
Yes, Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace. I'm wondering why, we were 4th from the bottom, and then looks like we're going to be in the median. So why is it that we have gone up relative to our neighbors? That's one question. And another question is, we are a tourist community. We have Airbnbs. We have some people who have 10, 15 people in these Airbnbs. Has the town ever thought about entertaining that these people have their Airbnbs making the $2,000, $3,000 per week, give them the surcharge? So instead of the average family who's, as you showed us, we're not exceeding the minimum, why don't we just, for all these people, they can write it off too. So Uncle Sam will help them pay, it's a it's an expense because their real estate, it's a business. So have we looked into that? It might be a consideration because a lot of people in Narragansett, aren't independently wealthy, and for us to go up, for people who aren't using more water, and if you're doing the Airbnb and you're renting it out to 10, 15 people, they're going to be taxing our sewage system, which can eventually be overflowing with what, and then it's going to really cost us a lot of money. So I just want you to address those questions and see if maybe that could be considered. Thank you.
So I'm going to turn back to that slide. So one thing I didn't note is this is showing 2 different years. So 2023 is your current town charge. That is 4th from the bottom. The other one is for next year, or technically we're in fiscal 24 now, so this year. But all these other utilities, we don't know what rate increases they're going to do. This is only based on what they have on their websites or what's publicly available. So many other utilities are in the same situation, or if they're not, they will be, and they're going to need to raise rates as well. So that's the real reason why that one goes up. Your other question, so for water and sewer rates as an enterprise fund, they really have to be based on the characteristics of water and sewer usage and classes. So just because someone is in a different type of home or building, there's not a real nexus there for charging them more. Now they should use more water if they have a large family in there, and that should be reflected directly in their rates. So those homes that are in these Airbnbs, if they're constantly renting them out, they should go through that minimum fairly quickly and then start hitting those tiered rates, which does cost more as you use more. So,
Thank you. Is anyone else wishing to comment on this? Okay. Anyone else from the council? All right. Thank you very much for the presentation. Very informative. Appreciate the information. Okay, so we have 5 minutes before we have to go to the public hearing. So that will allow us for at least one comment from the public. They take 3 minutes. So, Mr. Tierney, do you have the list of? Dr. Al? Okay, are you both number 1 and 2? Are they 1 and 2? Okay, is there, okay. So we'll just, we'll wait till after the public hearing, and then, unless anyone else that has not signed up would like to speak. Okay. All right, so we'll take a couple minutes. We'll let our stenographer get set up and ready to go, and then we'll we'll start the public hearing at 7:30. Consent agenda, that's usually a quick one. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda, or do any council members wish to separate any of the agenda items from consent out?
Yes, Council President, I'd like to pull off number D7.
Okay, D7. Okay, anyone else? Okay, do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda minus D7?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? A motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. We'll try to get through that one in 3 minutes. Okay. So so D7 that was pulled. This is a motion to approve the services from HTX Helicopters LLC for 2 helicopters to provide rides during Gansett days in the total amount of $8,500.
So moved.
Second?
Okay. Discussion.
Yeah, I wanted this one pulled. And the explanation by the Parks and Rec Director talks about this being a very popular event in Gansett days, which is why they've doubled the helicopters to 2 this year. But I went in and did the math, and I want the council to listen to the math a little bit about this one. So each ride is between 3 to 4 minutes, and each ride is 3 people. So Finance Director could help me with my math here. I'm sure I'm right here. So 3 people is 9 people for every half hour. So in 1 hour, 18 people can go on. And the ask is for 5 hours of the helicopter time. So that means 90 people per helicopter can go on this ride. So a collective number of 180 people. That's about $50 a person, because the rides are offered for free. So I just wanted to bring this up. I know it's a very popular event. We have very long lines, but that is an awful lot of free taxpayer dollars to give to 180 lucky people. And I just wanted to have the council talk about whether or not we want to approve it. I know that the money comes from a grant that is given by a portion of by a very generous person in the community. I don't know that this amount is streamlined just for that, but it's for our summer activities. But it's an awful lot of money, $8,500 for 180 people.
I'm actually going to, Mr. Tanner, do you have information? Is it all covered by the funding from individual?
All the funds used for this is through that trust expense account.
So
It's from donations.
yeah, so the donation, so we've never had to pay additional funding, so it's all covered. Like those helicopter rides are all covered.
Paid for
So
by
there's
that.
never any, I know the math might be different, but we've never had to pay, and
Well, it's double this year than it was before, and I understand it's all covered. I just want to point out that maybe we could better use our money for other activities that would include more than 180 people. That line was really long, and there are going to be a lot of people disappointed if they can't get on, and only 180 people will win. That just doesn't seem like a program that we should put forward.
any other comments from the council? Okay, we're gonna have to move on to, we'll get back to this agenda item to discuss it further, but for the time being, the time's 7:30. We're gonna have to switch to the public hearing portion of the meeting. So there's a motion to open and hold a public hearing, acting as the Urban Renewal Board of Review on an application for Class B victualler limited alcohol license from Narragansett Casino LLC, doing business as Narragansett Casino, located at 11 Pier Marketplace, Narragansett, Rhode Island. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, seconded by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Do we have anyone wishing to speak? Okay, please state your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Christian Infantolino with Murphy Pryor and Infantolino, and I'm here representing the applicant Narragansett Casino LLC. Also tonight I have with me Attorney John Mancini and Attorney Robert Flanders, as well as Lori Kelly, the principal of Narragansett Casino LLC, if there's any other questions that need to be answered. Before I start, I would like to, there was a couple, I guess there was a question regarding a site plan as well as how the building was going to be, or the Unit C was going to be cordoned off, which is something I'm going to talk about. I have a photo of that, I have a site plan, and I also have submittals of letters or signatures of businesses of support and no objection of the application that I would like to submit. So the applicant owns and operates a theater and banquet facility. They're currently in possession of multiple business licenses that were issued through the town. They have a certificate of occupancy for the building, and the building is actually, or the business is actually operating under a currently approved use by this board. Tonight, we're here for a simple request of adding a beer and wine license to their business licenses. The site where the applicant's operating out of has historically had businesses which obtained Class B licenses. In 2006, the town council approved the Village Inn's Class B license into the theater, and then in 2012, they actually expanded the service through the whole lower floor area. Tonight's request is for less than the whole floor area that was approved in 2012 and is not for full liquor. It's just for beer and wine. On top of that, this is probably one of the only, if not the first, application to be vetted for alcohol license, strictly for alcohol license, to be vetted through the planning board. And in your package, you have a planning board memorandum to the town council with a recommendation and a few items of concerns that they had. I'd like to briefly address those concerns quickly and then move down to possibly any questions that you might have. So one of the concerns was, does the landowner need to sign off on the liquor license application? The other was security procedures adopted to ensure alcohol consumption will only take place within the building. The third was that the bar facility in Unit C was isolated from the remainder of the property, which is the photograph that I presented, just how they're doing that, how they're blocking that off. And the last was that all employees working with liquor would be tip certified in accordance with state law. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. That's going to happen. With regards to whether or not a landowner needs to sign off, based on all the research that I found, the liquor license applications are granted to the individual or the entity and not the actual location. It's different from a zoning application where relief is actually granted to the property and not the owner. There's nothing that I found in the general law, the Department of Business Regulation, rules or regulations, case law, or any of the town ordinances that require a landowner to sign off on a liquor license application. With regards to security procedures to contain alcohol within the building, my clients set a form of procedures which include that all patrons are going to enter from the front of the building and be checked in by a tip-certified, ID checker. The applicants agreed to have tip-certified employees at the front door. The bars will all have tip-certified servers checking stamps or bands prior to service. The serving staff will be all tip-certified, so they'll be roaming the floors to make sure that the property and the license, the business is operating in compliance with state law. The exit of the building will actually be the other door to the front entrance, so there'll be an employee there watching people walk in and out, so to stop traffic with glasses in their hand or walking out the door. And then the applicant also has security cameras on site where they store their video. And they have worked with the town police, or the town's police, and will continue to do so to implement any procedures that need to be put into place for safety or liquor concerns. So they're willing to do all that. With regards to the facility being isolated, I showed you that picture, or I presented the picture. They are going to block off the bar area. So if you look at the service area, they're just making the draft pull area, the front end, and then they'll have dividers at the back end that completely block off the back section of Unit C. And like I said, they're going to follow all state and local rules and regulations. The last thing I want to address is just this afternoon, you guys received two objections. You've also received a memorandum later in the afternoon from our firm, or from our side, with our position on that. And we do stand by the position that was stated within our memorandum. The memorandum basically is that the objectors have failed to substantiate or demonstrate any evidence confirming ownership of the land. That was the beginning part. Tonight, they did submit some deeds showing what they own and what they didn't own. What they did do, though, is that what's substantially flawed is their calculations. Based on the engineering report, they are calculating land underneath the building structure, which when taken out, would bring them below the 50% threshold, if there was even a threshold based on state law. Currently, right now, we have a lease for the property that's underneath the building, and based on these calculations, it would assume that the objectors have actually won their lawsuit when there's been no injunctions, orders, or any other dismissals going on with the other litigation surrounding this. So item one is that they haven't met their standard. They've convoluted the numbers to think that they have 50+% objecting to the area. And that's a fatal flaw to the objection. It is the objector's burden to prove anything differently. That's what I have for this application, unless the commission has some questions for me or anything that we can address that you might have other issues with.
Anyone from the council have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Dr. Alba?
Excuse me. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace, Narragansett, Rhode Island.
And spell your last name for the record.
A-L-B-A, Alba.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've heard some very good reviews from neighbors and residents. I operate the Odd Town Narragansett page, and people reached out to me saying this is a wonderful establishment for the children, the kids. You know, they have ping pong, they have pinball machines, foosball. So I go, wow, that sounds great. They said, oh yeah, I took my grandkids there. It was a wonderful time. So I think I want to applaud the owner for creating something which is kid-friendly. That's good. That's great. I haven't seen the petition, so I don't know, but I recall when we were when we bought the library building, we had a concern about, the liquor store being adjacent to it, because you got the kids going into the library and whatnot, and And also, anytime a liquor license of any kind was granted in the past, they wanted to make sure that food was also being served. So someone's not just going to go in there and drink, drink, drink. So I guess my concerns are it's this establishment which is going to be serving liquor, if it's going to be adjacent to a place where, you know, parents, grandparents, or, you know, or those who are responsible for children are going to be going there and frequenting that. Is this a good mix, literally and figuratively? Alcoholism is a sickness. It's a drug. Alcohol is a drug like any other drug, and things could get out of control. So I heard that you said that the precautions set up, which I was glad to hear that. But I would just like to hear some additional assurance, like in regards to having the kids over there and the establishment over here. Is there going to be food served? Is that going to be a requirement to receive a beverage? Could someone just go over there and, you know, get 4 or 5 beers? When I was a kid at Scarborough Beach, they had Olivo's Beach. I don't know if any of you remember Olivo's Beach. It's back in the day. Some of you probably weren't even born back then. But at Olivo's Beach, they actually had a liquor, a place where they served food and liquor. And unfortunately, there were some fights that resulted. And cameras or no cameras, if people act out, if they're drunk, they're intoxicated, some of them act out of their mind, sadly. But if you could just clarify some of that information, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
The gentleman in the back.
Excuse me, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Thank you. And would you state your name and spell it?
I'm Charles Watson. Charles, C-A-H-A-R-L-E-S, W-A-T-S-O-N.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm here to support the casino. I've been using that facility for quite some time, pre-COVID, for events through the College of Engineering. I know we have a lot of buildings and a lot of facilities, but sometimes we don't have space for our students and for our faculty and staff to be able to host type of events where we give out awards, where we have special events for the students. Like one of the things, we have E-Week, where during the week we have students doing all sorts of events. And then at the end of the week, we have a ball where the students get dressed up just like you're going to some type of event. They're dressed to the 100s. We call it the 9s. And they look really good. So when you have 150 engineering students dressing properly and going into an event, it's just a celebration of who we are and what we want to represent. And the casino has been a place where we went on a consistent basis. Unfortunately, prior to COVID, it closed, and it was closed for quite some time, so we had to use another facility. This past year, academic year, not the current, in the spring, we had an E-Week, and it was great to know that the casino was open again. And I may have to tell you that it was an absolute fabulous time that we had there. The students live here. They're from here, some of them. And what was great about having the event there, we know that we can protect the students because the police station is right around the corner. It's a place that we feel comfortable with as an administration. My dean showed up, Dr. Marchese showed up, and he thought it was a wonderful way for us to even have faculty and staff events at the casino. We serve beer and wine at the university, but having a place where you can get off campus and really celebrate one another, it was really a great time. I don't know about the alcoholism and all of that, but there's a lot of restaurants that got a liquor license that have kids in them while their parents are eating. So you gotta have that balance. We're responsible adults, right? Our students are responsible adults. They're engineers. And when I do have police detail at these events, the police detail is kind of like, wow, we don't have to do anything because our students, all students aren't wild. All students aren't trying to have fights. All students, they just want to celebrate. And plus, that system that they're talking about, them coming in the door, being there, making sure they had bands on, making sure if they was of age, and then also, too, making sure that they followed the rules. And then we also have staff there. I'm there. The dean's there. We have other members of our faculty there. celebrating at a place where we think is really great. This is Narragansett. Narragansett, I went to school here, right? I played football here, did really well here. And having an opportunity to come down here and blow off some steam as a young adult, this is great. But now we have an opportunity to have a place that we can call our own, right? It's been closed for a long time. Now we're coming back to engage this food, drink, and celebration. Everybody don't drink. But the bottom line is this, is that I believe, right? I don't know what's going on. I know this. I know that the Narragansett Casino is a place where our students can actually call their own. And that's why I'm here today to say to you guys on the board is that this. I don't know what the situation is, but I know this. There's a restaurant around the corner that serves alcohol and there's kids in it from the beach and all that kind of stuff. They're running all over the place. They're not sitting at the bar drinking. They're not doing anything wrong. But you have a place where they can watch movies. You have a place where they can have arcade. And the old school arcade that we grew up with was really fun and exciting to be a part of. Our students had a phenomenal time. And I'm not saying this because I want the casino to get their liquor night. I'm saying this because this is actually true. And we have documentation, we have pictures, we have video of the time pre-COVID at the casino, and then this past spring at the casino. And when we get a chance to come down here and enjoy the lovely place and the beaches, this is a place that we call our own. So I'm hoping that you can allow them to have beer and wine. And I don't consider beer and wine actually liquor, but, but it is something for older adults. And then this is an opportunity for us at the College of Engineering to be able to bring our faculty and staff to celebrate this too, where we want to honor their success in teaching our students the research that they do and giving out awards for them doing the job that we ask them to do to help our students learn to become great engineers of our city, of our state, and of our country. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ciliberto?
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help
I
you
do.
God? And please state your
Catherine.
name and spell it, please.
Catherine Celeberto, Celeberto, 48 Earls Court. I don't have any objection to the liquor license or any of the activities planned. The only thing I'm asking about is a recent report from the fire marshal. The planning board references a report from 2012, and I'd like to know if the facility has been inspected since then. The fire codes are quite a bit different now than they were in 2012. And like I said, I don't see any report attached to the agenda. So the chief is here. I guess he could probably say something. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing? We'll take all the questions later. Anyone else wishing to comment from the public? Mr. Doherty?
Can I just ask for clarification purposes? Am I restricted to 3 minutes here this evening? Okay, thank you. I just wanted to know.
There's no restriction on the public hearing.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it. Forgive my informality, but I think I'm going to pass out if I have to wear this suit jacket in here. My brothers over here are much more qualified to not see him sweat. Patrick Doherty for Beachcomber Properties LLC, the owner of the premises, which is the subject of this hearing this evening. A couple of comments I'd like to make to begin with. I firmly disagree with Mr. Infantolino. There is no lease for this property. There is no assignment. That's the subject of court proceedings and arbitration. We've been in mediation proceedings. The arbitration is on schedule now. Actually, it's going to get continued with new counsel coming on board to join the forces. But there are certain things here that are truths that cannot be distanced from in these proceedings. The landowner has always signed off on liquor applications in the town of Narragansett, in particular with this property itself. The 2006 and the 2012 liquor license applications that were referenced by my brother earlier required Gilbane, the landlord's approval. And at that time, there was a tenant in good standing of the property, which was Beach Street Realty, LLC. So this town has always required the sign-off for liquor licenses, and there's a good reason for that. As an owner of property, if anything happens on that property in connection with any kind of a liquor-related event, the landlord will undoubtedly get sued. That's what happens. They join anyone and everyone. Look at what happened with the station fire 20-some-odd years ago. They had someone whose name was on a poster outside being sued along with everyone else, the landlord, anyone and everyone. When liability occurs, the net is drawn out and cast far and wide. So it's important for a landowner to be on board with any use that occurs within their premises. We don't believe that they own the building by virtue of the fact that its transfer violated the very terms of the lease that they claim to be a tenant under. In addition, the very lease that they claim to be a tenant under requires the landlord's signature to be signed off. We've been here day one from the beginning last year when we were taking up the council's time and the planning board's time and effort uselessly when the application was withdrawn, saying the exact same thing. The wheels of justice turn slowly, unfortunately. We have our cases and our actions, but I don't believe that this council is doing this town a favor by voting in favor of anything to occur on these premises until these questions of law are resolved. With regard to the landowner signing off, it's not just in Narragansett. If you look in South Kingstown, they require the owner of the property's signature. Every city and town in which I've operated in, and I've been doing municipal law for over 30 years in the state of Rhode Island, everyone that I'm aware of that I looked at and found research on and has an application that says owner applicant. We instituted something with an online permitting and application system. And I think there's some things lacking in the way it is, but the protocols were never changed to match the online permitting system. And to think that an owner of property upon which alcohol will be served should not be allowed to weigh in on that is unconscionable to me, because you're playing with liability. And here, liability with alcohol is very much at stake, especially in light of the business that they're claiming to turn on. It's just going to be a gaming place. I know a cease and desist was issued with regard to that use, and I thank the council for doing that, and we didn't have anything to do with it. But I do thank the council for seeing that. But when they do apply, or whatever they're going to engage in over there are children, as Dr. Alba said. There are children running throughout the premises, and they want to serve alcohol in a place that they say is a kid-friendly environment. Well, how do you control that? You know, this has never had a use instituted at that property that has this type of a business model and a use model occurring on it. So I think it's a faulty plan. I think they have a horrible business plan for this property, and I don't think it's well thought out and well founded. And I think that they're going to find that they don't have a tenancy and that they're not going to be able to operate. But if you look at what they submitted here for the parking on top of it, and I'm just going to take a few issues with just a few of the criteria here. The parking, they've included street parking that's already taxed and already used. And by tax, I mean that in the sense of being burdened by public use. You look at they've listed the spaces in front of the library. Are they going to use the library spaces for their parking for this facility in connection with an alcohol license? Are they going to use the other common areas that are out there? And again, since the plans were drawn up with Gilbane and the parking was allocated under the Declaration of Uses and Restrictions that are recorded, things have changed. Other businesses have operated in there. They need 4 seats per 1,000 square feet. They need 32 parking spaces. What they're doing is they're looking and saying, oh, we have all these parking spaces available. It's nothing. It's smoke and mirrors. They don't have that. Trio came in and purchased spaces, or J.T. O'Connell Realty, the holding company for Trio, purchased their property, some spaces, and then they got an exclusive easement granted by Gilbane to use a huge number of spaces. I think they're up to 72, if I'm not mistaken. And in addition to that, the landlord has the right to allocate parking. and to do that in conjunction with businesses that are already existing and those that are sought to be permitted. Now, when this concept came out, on their webpage, they were listing, they had a capacity for events up to 802 people. That is not on their webpage anymore, but there are screenshots, it's recoverable. That's preposterous that they could even assume that they could have events with 802 people. And what they had before the council here, it's in excess of 200. How are you going to park those patrons? And again, they say that it's going to be children-oriented and whatnot, but you know, I don't see this business plan being oriented to just children. I think it's more to make money off of selling booze, alcohol, however you term it, liquor, wine. The parking, if you look at it, and again, you know how much of a hotbed issue parking is in this town. I mean, you open up the Independent or the Narragansett Times and you see all the discussion, the letters to the editor, you hear the voices that are behind me coming up to the podium, meeting after meeting after meeting, and parking is an issue. And I know that the argument will be, well, the Coast Guard house, they don't have any parking, they don't have enough parking either. Well, the Coast Guard house is there. It's been there for over 100 years, the premises. And all these other businesses have been there. Trio has been there. The existing businesses have had restaurants within the Pier Marketplace as well. They've been there. They are trying now to come in, Narragansett Casino that is, trying to come in, and they are trying to take up and say, we're entitled to those spaces, we're going to use them. Well, what do you say to the existing business owners that need those spaces? I mean, we are a tourist town. These businesses work their tails off to try and make their money in the summers and the warmer weather months so that they can make it through the winter. And if you go ahead and make it that much harder for my clients' businesses within the Pier Marketplace that are using that parking and the other existing businesses in the area, you're going to have a lot of dissatisfied citizens and business citizens in this town that are going to be losing a lot of money. In addition, one of the things that they have raised here is the issue of our fatal defect in regard to the calculation. And, you know, again, I didn't get the memo. I was never sent what they said, but I understand now that that they're claiming that we have to prove ownership. Well, I've provided my counsel on the other side, and I've provided your solicitor, and I would like to provide as an exhibit in this proceeding a number of things in support of our objection, which we filed with the town clerk this afternoon. And the first thing that I'd like to, well, actually, if I may, I can give you copies. I've given counsel copies already and your solicitor. But if I may approach, or can I hand you copies of what I'm going to be referring to?
You can you please hand them to,
Jim, will we have the ability to have both the applicant as well as Beachcomber use our screen to show these parking spots they're talking about? The applicant spoke about parking, and I know the council received something this morning, but there we go. Thank you.
Now, if you look at that, the parking itself, a lot has changed in terms of the business. The town, I believe, took 58 parking spaces plus or minus for the library. They have sole exclusive use of that. And I don't think that they had to purchase them as part of the purchase for the library property. In addition, Trio took spaces as well that are largely impacting the availability of other spaces out there. And I'm going to show you right now where Trio is. to use that property. So that leaves a number of spaces in the middle that are subject to the landlord's control and allocation. There's nothing to say that they can lease those spaces out. There's nothing to say that they can't take away the rights. In fact, in the declaration of restrictions in the deed that's validly recorded in the land evidence records and approved as part of the redevelopment ordinance, or the proceedings rather, the landlord has the right to totally take away any of the non-easement areas that are up to his sole discretion. And we don't want to allocate those parking spaces to the detriment of the other businesses and allow Narragansett Casino to come in and take over the existing parking, which is already at a premium. Now, I want to direct your attention to what you have in front of you. My brother had mentioned that we have to show ownership. Before you are valid recorded deeds for not only my client, which is book 974 at page 301, where my client took title to the Narragansett Pier Marketplace. That's a 4-page deed, validly recorded. In addition, there are 2 quitclaim deeds to J.T. O'Connell Realty Company with quitclaim covenants. These are proof of ownership. And in addition to that, you have a 1-page calculation that was done by Josh Rosen. He's a licensed PE engineer with JRE LLC Civil Engineering and Consulting. And in that, he references a survey that was done. And this was not done by my client. It's done by Christopher Palmer. And if you look, the area that is in blue, or in yellow, is the premises of the Pier Cinema. Narragansett Casino claims to own that building. The blue line is the lot line for the Beachcomber Properties LLC has fee ownership of. In addition to that, the orange line is J.T. O'Connell Realty Company, and their ownership, and Trio is in the block over there. The pink is a 200-foot radius circle. So if I may, I'd like to hand this up to the council. And I would like to apologize. I would have had multiple copies made up, but we were in a crush when we heard that there was an issue with regard to the ownership and the objections. But what this shows is the 200-foot radius of abutters. Now, it's very important to understand what the law is and what the law states. And Chapter 7, which is Rhode Island General Laws, Section 3-7-19A, states that retailers Class B, C, N, and I licenses, and any license provided for in Section 3-7-16.8 shall not be issued to authorize the sale of beverages in any building where the owner of the greater part of land within 200 feet of any point of the building files with the body or official having jurisdiction to grant licenses his or her objection to the granting of the license. And then it goes on to talk about schools and churches. But that's a mandatory section of state law. There's no waving around that. It's a statute that is in the books in Rhode Island. This council has no discretion, sitting as the redevelopment authority, to violate this section. No discretion whatsoever. And if you look at the law, the only way to get around this is to pass an amendment to the law. And I'll even share this piece with you. The law itself is multiple pages because it defines certain geographical areas within various cities, such as Providence, Newport, I believe Smithfield is in there too, the town of Cumberland, Central Falls, where they've carved out areas that the legislature granted authority to those liquor licensing bodies in those cities and towns to grant a liquor license that would not violate this law. So again, I'll hand the law?
Mr. Doherty, our town clerk had provided us with that. I believe everybody
Fantastic.
has one, so we have that. Thank
Fantastic.
you.
So again, if you look at the breakdown, and again, you look at the law, it says any point within 200 feet of any point of that building. That also includes the land underneath the building, because that is certainly within 200 feet of any point of the building. If you look at the calculations that were done, they're broken out, and between J.T. O'Connell Realty Co. and my client, Beachcomber, which are on the lots that are named in this communication and calculation from the engineer, it equates to 52% of the total land area in there. Now, they may come back and say, oh, but we're not using the whole building. We're only going to have it in certain parts. Well, that would hurt them even more, and that would increase the percentage of my client's property because it would narrow the 200-foot circle from the outlying properties. So I think beyond a reasonable doubt, we have evidence, A, that my client and another objector owns the majority of the land surrounding within 200 feet of this property and objects to the granting of the license. And therefore, I tell you, as a matter of law, there is no jurisdiction for this board to lawfully grant this license to Narragansett Casino. None whatsoever. When they use the word shall in a statute, that is mandatory. You can't get around that. And it couldn't be more clear in that law. So again, my client has never been asked to sign off on this application. They've never been approached to support this application. If this applicant claims that they have a lease, they haven't followed that lease because it requires the owner to sign off, the landlord to sign off on any applications to changes to zoning, to uses, to any applications to the administrative and regulatory bodies in the town or the state. In addition, I think it would open another Pandora's box to more litigation where this council is seeing fit to grant the license or to approve it. Again, my client has spent an enormous amount of money on legal fees for these controversies thus far. The appeal for the one-day license was rendered moot because by the time they got to it, it was over. The event is come and gone. Don't make us go to DBR when you have a mandatory statute that precludes you from granting this license. Don't make my client have to spend more money going in to try and go against the fool's errand that Narragansett Casino is engaging on in this. They don't have the parking. The premises is not theirs. You've always had owner and applicant signing off, in particular on this piece of property. It's in your files at the Department of Community Development and Planning. The requirement for the signatures, notes that pertain to that. The best evidence against the town for granting it in the absence of the owner's sign-off is in your own files. And I brought that to the attention of the board last year when they came up and then ultimately withdrew their application. But my client is a duly authorized manager of Beachcomber Properties, LLC. He's authorized and empowered under the operating agreement and named in the Secretary of State filings as the manager. And he has the power to direct all the activities of the LLC. The LLC absolutely opposes this on so many grounds, each and every ground that's named in our written objection that we timely filed. And I would ask this board not to grant this license. We shouldn't even be wasting our time. The fact that the planning board twice now has spent hours upon hours reviewing the application when they don't even have a right to submit it is unconscionable. It's a waste of our town's resources, your time and effort, and my client's money. So I urge you, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and I urge you to just deny this.
Any questions from the council? Anyone, thank you, Mrs. Durant. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm
Ms.
trying to
Counselor
read
Kopech.
this, and listen to you at the same time, which is not easy. But my question is, I don't see the word Beachcomber Properties on any of this documentation. Can you,
On any of the what?
and anything that you handed us?
Yeah, on the objection, it says Beachcomber Properties.
But all these, the quit claim deed is GP Pier Retail, warranty deed, GP Pier Detail. I don't know who, retail, I don't see anything that says Beachcomber Property on here. I was curious about that.
And I'll direct you to in a second if you would wait.
It's all right, just, it's an observation.
Yeah, well, there's two deeds for J.T. O'Connell's, and then there is the quitclaim deed. If you look at the one that says Book 974, page 301,
Yeah.
that's a deed, and in the top paragraph, and again, these are legal documents, I don't blame you. Half of our time, our eyes blur out and we phase out looking at these things. If you look at the second to last line in the first paragraph under warranty
I see
deed,
it.
and then the other deeds clearly state that in the same thing. It's the grantor-grantee clause in that. And again, one of the things also that I'd like to point out is that my client is named on the list of abutters within 200 feet of this property, or whatever it is for your notice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is anyone else from the public? Mr. Pugh?
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. And your name and spell it, please?
Yep, Jesse Pugh, Jesse Pugh.
Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, hope everyone's doing well tonight. I just wanted to speak quickly in support of the applicant. Like I think it was Mr. Watson who spoke earlier, I have good memories of using that space through the years, both growing up as, when it was operating as a true theater, as a cinema, because this building has been used for decades and decades going back. It's not like the applicant's asking to all of a sudden use this building as a business. It's always been that. And then as a function facility, I actually had my 20-year high school reunion there a few years back in 2016. Narragansett High School, class of 96. And it was great, and they served alcohol, beer, wine, and liquor, I think, at that event. Was not an issue. And for those kind of events, you really do need to have that beer and wine license at a minimum. But in terms of what is being discussed tonight in the public hearing, I think it's pretty straightforward. I know that the lawyer just kind of went over every possible objection that could be brought up to maybe see what sticks and what confuses the council. But this is a straightforward liquor license, a use that had, a license that's been granted previously, both as a function facility, a function hall, and as a bar when it was Shore Break as well. And I don't even know if Shore Break served food at that point. But, so you have that previous use. And again, this isn't a change in use. This is just a liquor license. So you had the lawyer say that the landowner needs to approve changes of use or zone, but that's not what we're talking about, just a liquor license. You have the unanimous recommendation from the planning board. And you have people that have lived here for a long time, both in the applicant and their partners, who've had businesses here in town that really just want to open up a business that will benefit the community, and not just tourists or adults, but kids, families, and adults at night, and people coming in, and businesses that might want to have a function. I think we should be happy that you have people that want to bring that back, because I think I've heard all the council members talk about wanting to bring back the pier. And these are people that want to do that. One of the points that was just brought up was how the town requires the property owner to sign when they apply for the liquor license. And you have that because Lori Kelly is the property owner. She owns that building. They're not leasing that building, they bought that building. They're the property owner, they've signed, and that's, that's the requirement. So to say that the landowner also needs to do it, again, it's just kind of, I think, blurring the lines a little bit and making things more confusing than they need to be. As far as abutters, that's the case with really everything. Abutters always have the ability to object, but they have the ability to object, not to just stop the process. You can't have an abutter say, they're not going to get this license because I disagree with it. They can object, which is what they're doing, but they don't have the power to stop a business from getting a permit. And I guess that's really all I have to say. The only other thing I would say is that it was great to see Gil Bain sell off his ownership in these properties and in owning the land. It's unfortunate that we have an owner now who's looking, I guess, to be the next Gil Bain, because they're doing everything in their power to stop a business from opening and serving the public, and it's really hurting Narragansett. I mean, this is a fight that doesn't benefit the town, and this could go on for years, and the people who live here are just going to continue to wait for that area to come back up, be useful, be fun. You have the library, you have other businesses opening up now, you have the sushi restaurant that seems to be doing pretty well. You have people that want to open up the theater, and it's being stopped, or it's being at least attempted to be stopped. So it's kind of a shame when everyone really just wants to see the business open so we can all use it. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Okay. All right, Steve. Oh.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is John Mancini. I'm an attorney, and I represent the applicant this evening. I represent the applicant in the litigation, and I've not been involved in the approval process before any of the boards and commissions, but came this evening in order to rectify the record and to give some specific information to the council so that their decision is educated and so that the record is clear. And I don't want to belabor the points, as I'm certain you've heard it before. I know I've read the record. I know you've heard it before, most recently back in April when you issued a provisional license. Mr. Doherty's points I can surmise for you very simply. There are 4 issues that he addressed to the board. The first one was ownership. Then he talked about parking. Then he talked about liability. And then finally, he handed you a piece of legislation, a statute. And he emphasized the word shall, and he said that essentially you have no right to issue this license. You are completely hogtied, if you will. Now, let me address the first issue, ownership. Mr. Doherty appeared before you and said he represents the owner of the property. That's incorrect, and that's misinformation, as I'm sure the board at this juncture is aware of it. Well, who Mr. Doherty represents is Beachcomber. Beachcomber bought a lease agreement. That lease agreement is a 99-year prepaid lease. 99 years prepaid. My client purchased the actual building. My client has a deed to the building. That means something, and it means more than what Mr. Doherty wants you to believe that it means. It means he actually has physical access to the property, a property which has been vented through your process, more so than other businesses in this town have been vented with respect to this license, which is the liquor license, in addition to the multitude of other licenses and reviews that the planning board has done. Mr. Doherty says the planning board shouldn't have done that. It was a complete waste of the town's time and a complete waste of everyone's time. But my client disagrees with that. My client paid significant monies for this building on the representation that he owns the building, and he has the building. So to say this evening that Beachcomber is the true owner is not accurate. The owner and the individual that has applied, the entity which has applied for this license is Narragansett Casino. Narragansett Casino owns the building. It also has control of the land lease as a successor in interest to Beach Street property. And that's the crux of this whole claim, is whether or not there was a proper assignment between Beach Street Realty and Narragansett Casino. Mr. Doherty has been arguing this issue for the last 2 years. He went in district court to seek an eviction, and that failed. We're still here. He went to Superior Court and then all the way to the Supreme Court. We're still here. And now we're in arbitration, and hopefully shortly we'll have this issue resolved. Probably not to a final judgment because there's still appeal rights. So this could go on for another year or 2 years. And the hope is to stop this applicant while the litigation is progressing and use this license and other licenses as leverage in that litigation to try to bring Narragansett Casino to its knees. And that's simply not fair, and it's not proper justice. And that's why we have multiple claims for tortious interference. And we don't think that this council should participate in that process, a process which is bad faith, a process which is not what your regulations or your rules, or I should say state statutes permit. So that's the issue of ownership. The issue of liability is very simple. The lease agreement has a very detailed provision, as you can imagine, as most leases do, that describe the liability and insurance requirements, all of which my client has met. This building is fully insured. This building has added Beachcomber properties as an additional insured, as most other businesses are required to do, and as other businesses have done. So I can assure you that liability has been thoroughly thoughtful. I'm sorry, liability has been thought through thoroughly, and it has been established properly, as any businesses would, and it can be made a record and a condition here. Thirdly, with regards to parking, you know, my brother talks about Trio. Trio clearly has a deed, as you have. My brother says that Trio has 70 spaces. The deed reads 57 spaces. So if you look at the document that you have, the actual facts are 57 spaces. When you look at Beachcomber's deed, Beachcomber has the ability, the exclusive right to use 19 of those spaces. But Beachcomber does not have the legal control of exclusivity over all the other parking spaces. So those other parking spaces are utilized in common with the other tenants, as my client has done in the past. So this isn't a new building that has come arised out of thin air on this property. It's been there for quite some time. Parking has been an issue in the past. It's been addressed. It's going to be handled properly as it would in any other business. It is not a basis for which you can deny the application for the liquor. Finally, you have a recommendation from the planning board that has reviewed this issue extensively. So that is not a basis. Finally, my brother throws at you the legislation, or the statute, which is Rhode Island General Laws 3-7-19A. And my brother cites the word shall, and he's correct. Shall is a mandatory term, but there's plenty of case law that shows you that shall is not always mandatory. Shall is only mandatory when there's a consequence from it. And most times, it's in the law, it is permissive, it is a may. So shall isn't necessarily completely mandatory, but that's not even within your prerogatives. That is going to be decided ultimately by either the Division of Business Regulations or the arbitrator and on appeal in the Supreme Court. The real issue you have to look at is whether or not this applicant has met the requirements of your regulations for the issuance of the license. And I think that this applicant, having gone through the process, has checked off every box it's been required to check off, and it is done in a complete, thorough, and honest manner. And so you can't deny the application based on the question of liability, question of ownership, and question of parking. Now, back to jurisdiction. My brother speaks to and has provided to you what I call the Rosen letter. Rosen letter is accurate in the sense that it has identified the square footage and has identified the percentage of that square footage, which is an objection to this application. But a letter is only, a report or an opinion is only accurate based upon the information which it relies upon. And the information that the engineer relied upon was the presumption and assumption that the land underneath the building is part of the calculation. And that's incorrect, because as noted, the land underneath is subject to a land lease, which is controlled by my client, Narragansett Casino. Narragansett Casino has the exclusive right to that lease for 99 years. And it's only 30 years into that lease. It has that lease for another 70 years. Another 70 years. So what Beachcomber is trying to do essentially is to seek to terminate the lease agreement. It's seeking to, in some way, shape, or form, have this building forfeited to Beachcomber. And one of the key principles of law that you learn on day one in law school is that the law abhors a forfeiture. No one ever wants to see somebody lose their property at a forfeiture. And so for Beachcomber to think that the courts are going to allow this building, which was bought by my client properly, recorded in the land evidence record, to be forfeited to it for some type of violation of a lease, which has subject to cures, is quite a lift. And we feel comfortable and confident in our litigation. And that's shown by the fact that district court, superior court, Supreme Court, arbitration, none of those bodies have entered an injunction. If this was such a clear-cut and a simple matter, then you would have an order before you enjoining us from proceeding, because the courts would identify that this would be a fool's mission, as described by my brother. But you don't have that. And finally, and most importantly, what you do have is a responsible corporate citizen in the community who's seeking to better the Narragansett Pier area, who has done everything that has been asked of it in this process, who has had to fight off a landlord who is an obstructionist and someone seeking simply to acquire their building at any cost, regardless of what the consequences are for the community and for this entity. And that shouldn't be rewarded in any way. What this board is obligated to do is to enforce its ordinances. And if you deny the application, you must deny it based on the fact that this applicant has not met your regulations. And that I see as being simply difficult, if not impossible, to do because of the record you have before you. Again, I thank you for your time. I don't think that this is a waste of time. I think this is an important issue for my client. It's an important issue for the residents of Narragansett, and one that I appreciate you've given thorough and complete consideration for.
Thank you. Sorry.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I hope you God.
I do.
Thank you. And your name and spell it, please?
Kenneth Kuson, Kennethcusson.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here as the Corporate Secretary of J.T. O'Connell Realty. Our primary issue in objecting to this application really comes down to the parking. You have, as a matter of record, our deed, which does outline the parking that was purchased along with the land for Trio, which is our tenant. But there's also a recorded easement, which gives us clear jurisdiction of 72 spaces. And that's really the crux of our issue. And it's a matter of public record, and it's a recorded easement. Are there any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hallberg?
Scott Hallberg.
I'll just swear you in, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. And your name and spell it, please?
Scott Hallberg, SCOT, HALLBERG.
Thank you.
So, I bought Beachcomber Properties. That's me. I bought the property. Along with it, I get property rights too, right? Including the land that sits beneath this building that Narragansett Casino purport that they own. I own that land underneath it. Do I have a say-so? It seems to me that I should. And, I think this stall does hurt the town. We put an eviction on hold pending arbitration. They don't own the land. I own the land. Planning Department's recommendations were owner's signature. Gilbane always signed off on liquor licenses in the past. I don't know why this is any different. I provided an engineer study showing that between Beachcomber and J.T. O'Connell, we have 52% of the land, and I own the land under the building too. So what more do we need? What more do we need to do? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So there were some questions that came up from some of the residents. I think you wrote some down. Would you like to come up and address Dr. Alba's questions, and I'll have Chief address Ms. Silberto's question.
Christian Fantalino again. I believe it was Dr. Alva's question had to do with, is food going to be served, and how are we going to separate children and adults and service of that kind, if I might summarize. Food is going to be served, and a menu was supplied as part of this application. I can get you a copy of that as well if you want. It's one of the requirements of an alcohol license. With regards to the separation of the children and the adults, the process, the security process is going to be either a stamp or band type situation.
Excuse me, sir. Could you speak towards me, please?
Oh, sorry about that. The security procedures for the separation are going to be when you check into the facility in the front door. The TIPS certified trainers are going to check your IDs, and they'll issue over 21s either a stamp or a band. Again, I don't know if they're going to do an under 21 one color or, something like that. But there will be a designation of being checked for alcohol service, and then those tip servers are going to be checking those bands at the gates as well. I think one of the, some of the public already mentioned, there's multiple facilities that deal with children and adults and alcohol. This is not an activity of running rampant. As I mentioned earlier, the applicants are applying for beer and wine. They're not applying for a full liquor license. It's a beer and wine license in a theater atmosphere with a banquet facility. So hopefully that addressed your concerns. You're welcome. And then, I'm sorry, Kathy Ciliberto.
Oh, Ms. Ciliberto, yeah, asked for.
I forgot what your
It was about the, I think Chief Partington could probably answer that. Was it?
She wanted to know the last time
Yeah.
that the fire marshal came in to actually.
That's right.
Oh, do you have that information?
The
Okay,
fire
thanks.
marshal, yeah. So after the applicants purchased the building, they went through multiple renovations to bring the building up to code, to make sure everything was good in order to get the certificate of occupancy. Through that process, the fire marshal did come to the facility, has been to the facility, issued the certificate of occupancy with all of the fire suppression stuff being in place that needs to be in place. So he has been to the facility as recent as, I want to say 23, it may have been the end of 22, but it was when, I think it was, no, it was 23. It was when they got their certificate of occupancy, so, and signed off on all of that.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thanks. I think those are all the questions we had from our residents. Is there anyone else wishing to speak before we move on to last, any comments from the council before we close the public hearing? All right, Mr. Murphy.
I got lost coming here. I had to drive around the block here. Anyway,
Excuse
Patrick
me.
Murray.
Excuse me, would you raise your right hand, please?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you, and state
Thank
your
you.
name and spell.
Patrick Murray, 83 Nepog Road.
Thank you.
Can I put my hand down?
Yes.
Okay. I got a call on this. I was watching it at home. There's a lot of inconsistencies. The one thing about parking, okay, 60 years ago when they did the whole urban renewal deal, there was a theater there. How many parking spots were issued for that theater? It's still the same building, same square footage. And the other thing about how the state has control over within 200 feet of a commercial building, if there's one objection, and especially if there's parking and issues like that, and there's a formula that Mr. Doherty, and I don't take anything away from Mr. Doherty's legal prowess. It's just that I just don't think parking is an issue. And the fact that the pier area is in an urban renewal zone, which you guys, as a council, has full control over, and that may supersede any state. Again, I'm not an attorney. So, I don't know. I just think this property is being treated a little differently than other establishments. And the other thing that bothered me is, didn't we have an alcohol tent serving hot alcohol at the last Christmas? Was that a couple years ago, or was this past Christmas? A couple years ago. I mean, we had a tent, there were kids running around. Santa Claus didn't show, but I think he was half in the bag. We might have been busy that night. Anyway, the point is that there's a lot of differences here. And the town shouldn't be getting in the middle of a civil suit from a ground lease and a building owner, okay? Let them work it out with a mediator. So if you've been approving stuff for this business, and, you know, I don't think it's our call to deny something because a document wasn't signed when it may have been signed previously, but there was no contention in the lease, the ground lease, you know, litigation. So there was no, you know, litigation there. So I don't know. I think it's an opportunity for the people to have yet another place to gather, and I don't think it's going to hurt the town. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's from the council. Okay, do I have seeing no comments, no further comments, can I have a motion to close the public
I'll make the
hearing?
motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Cicilline Bonanno, seconded by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Next up, we have a motion to receive the Planning Board's recommendation in regard to the application from Narragansett Casino LLC, doing business as Narragansett Casino, for a Class B victualler limited alcohol license. Do I have a motion?
I'll move the motion.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Cicilline Bonanno, seconded by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All set. So next, we're going to finish up our consent agenda item that we were discussing, and then we'll move on to a public comment after that. Thank you, everyone. That's come. Okay, so getting back to D7, just to discuss that, that's a motion to approve the services from HTX Helicopters LLC for 2 helicopters to provide rides during Gansett Days in the amount of $8,500. So do we have any other questions from the council regarding that agenda item? Okay, I see Mr. Vangermish.
Yeah, this is an accounting question. We see the expenses. Where is the revenue coming from? A gift from someone, or will there be a charge to the user of the helicopter? Yeah.
Mr. Tierney, can you please answer that? Because I know it's been a gift in the
No
past.
charge for the helicopter rides.
Yeah.
The funds are donated, some anonymous donors, and
Yeah, I just don't like free goods. Free goods caused all sorts of commotion and argument about who is getting the free good. When you have a free good, you take a risk of, I wouldn't say violence, but certainly a lot of pushing and shoving as to who gets the free good.
Thank you. Dr. Alba.
Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace. It's great to have donors. I don't know what their capacity is with the town. You know, that's all well and good. And we don't know, I don't know who this donor is. We don't know if it's someone on the, it's anonymous donor? It's anonymous, so it's not.
there's a variety of,
Okay.
some are anonymous, some are
Okay,
not.
okay. So if a high percentage of it was from one particular donor, you know, we've all heard, and I'm not going to say this is happening, it might not be, but there's a pay-to-play, and I'm going to be donating so much money to the town for this here situation. I don't know what, you know, you never know. But my other concern is the safety of helicopters. I have been in several helicopter rides in the past, and since that time, I've done my own background investigation. When I had a cousin who was living in Hawaii, and she goes, "Al, never go up in another helicopter again." I go, "Why not?" She goes, "Examine individuals who have died where there was a situation. God forbid, if someone goes up in this helicopter and they die, are we, the town, going to be liable? The people aren't paying any fees to go on this helicopter. We're supporting it. All of you have to do is Google people who have died on helicopters, and the people who have flown these helicopters are experts. They've been licensed. And in this day and age, with legalese as it is, we have to be concerned about being culpable. It's not that I want kids to have a good time, I do. But we also have to, the risk-reward. The parents went to a location, are they signing a waiver? That would be a concern too. But these people who are going on, are they signing a waiver? If your child, anyone dies on this helicopter ride, the town is not going to be liable. So I think we have to have important safeguards in this day and age to safeguard the town and anyone who's involved with approving this. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Celeberto.
Catherine Celeberto, 48 Earls Court. This $8,500 could be spent to really provide entertainment to hundreds of people. You could have movies, you could have bands, you could have other activities. This is such a small group that you're going to spend this money on, and I don't think it's a good expenditure of the money. As far as helicopter rides, I've been in a helicopter, but we went up and we took off. These helicopter rides, they come up and they come down, and they come, not too keen on that. I'm not sure if I had a young child, I'd let them go on it. But again, it's mostly the expenditure, a big expenditure for a one-day event for a few hours for 180 people maybe, when the money could be spent entertaining hundreds of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment? Any last comments from the council? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
That's 4-1. Okay, this was motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 4-1. Okay, so now we will move on to the open forum public comment portion of the meeting. I believe Dr. Albo was the first one to sign up, so you can come up for your public comments.
At the June 5th Narragansett Town Council meeting, there was a motion to restrict 2 of the 4 lots near the beach to be used exclusively for residents between 5 to 8 p.m. after the beach is closed. Councilwoman Lawler put forth a motion. After Council President and Councilwoman Kopech had reservations on the motion, and Council members Lawler and Ferrandi favored it, the floor was open for discussion. Then we had an orchestrated attempt by the NPRA, Narragansett Peer Residents Association, to influence our Council President and Kopech to change their minds. Former President Jesse Pugh and our elected president gave testimony. It is a non-issue with respect to the lots getting filled after 5. Then we had numerous NPRA members give false narratives to support more restrictive parking for non-residents. It was stated a vote for the motion is a vote for the residents. A vote for no is a vote against the residents. Dr. Gail Scowcroft then spoke out in favor of the motion too. She's the chair of the Friends of the Narragansett Town Beach. Joe Lawler concurred with her and reiterated her statements. While the motion failed, this shows some people who have powerful influence in this town result in false narratives and label our president and our former president. The leading advocates of the carrying capacity, more restrictive parking, and signage are the individuals of the NPRA and serve on numerous committees. Based on my daily videos of Narragansett Beach, the seawall, and area streets where there's existing timed parking, it clearly shows that the rationale for the carrying capacity study, more signage, and alleged crowds at the beach is seriously flawed. Tom Rowan, who serves on the advisory board, stated Most people thought the beach was well-run, but overcrowded. So we decided we thought it was necessary to find out how many people should be on the beach. What's the safe number? If there's too many people, it's uncomfortable. It's also an unsafe situation. In June 13, 2022, the Minister of the Recreation Advisory Board notes, Director Kershaw, received by Dr. Scowcroft, stating the Director Advisory Board directed the Director the need for a carrying capacity. The study was put on the agenda. Council Lawler approved it, and then it was approved by the Town Council. The leading advocates for the carrying capacity study, more restricted parking, and signage are individuals from the MPRA and serve on numerous committees. In a 2021 evaluation report, it notes the Community Development Director, Mike DeLuca, noted the beach is overcrowding, in large part to the relatively small size in relation to the beach demand and the available off-street and on-street parking. He believes the seawall parking is a contributing factor to the overcrowding and adversely impacting both the beach parking, sales, and retail business. Mr. DeLuca suggested a time-restricted parking could be designated on Ocean Road and area roads to reduce beach parking because it impacts while providing additional turnover. Out of all due respect to our town planner, community development, Mr. DeLuca, town manager, Mr. Tanny, town council members, and all the Narragansett staff, I strongly disagree with your push for more signage along Ocean Road and the area beaches based on my observational research done this summer. Based on my daily walks on Narragansett Beach and the area beaches, I can assure you that the beach is not overcrowded, and time parking will not create less demand for parking along the area roads. Thank you.
Mr. Tierney, who was next on the list?
No one else signed up.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Please state your name and address. Thank you.
Sorry?
Please state your name and address.
My name is Beverly Schneider, 68 Lakewood Drive. Before we put up any signage or even order the signage, I strongly recommend each of you view one or more of my daily videos. You will see even where we have existing signage that limits parking for 2 hours, those streets have cars parked bumper to bumper. Therefore, signage does not lessen the number of cars parking along those streets. Our beach is ranked one of the best. Therefore, why do we want to put up signage that will forever present sign pollution to our beautiful town? And each of you will be forever remembered for creating an everlasting eyesore along beautiful Ocean Road. Families would not be bringing their little children and loved ones to Narragansett Beach if they felt it was unsafe due to crowds. If a local small business can show justification that the lack of timed parking has hurt its establishment, then timed parking can be considered for several spaces, but to designate many spaces for a particular business is just wrong. People who open businesses at a location consider the number of parking spaces available before buying into that location for its business. I know a businessman in Galilee who was going to purchase Captain Foggy's, backed out due to not enough available parking. Well-established businesses such as the Coast Guard House can utilize their own valet parking to accommodate any parking restrictions. 2 polls on the Narragansett Town Council forum page indicate overwhelmingly people are against the carrying capacity study that has been approved, and they are against more signage in the pier area. Some may argue the polls are unscientific. I would argue are the surveys that presented from the Narragansett Pier Residents Association any more scientific, as they represent a very small fraction of the number of residents in the town of Narragansett. Elected town council members and appointed leaders of Narragansett, I urge you to strongly reconsider your push to put up more signage on all area streets in the pier and vote for no new signage unless there is sound justification. In fact, I would recommend removing the 2-hour signage along Memorial Square, as I do not see the need nor its effectiveness, aside from ticketing people who want to enjoy over a 2-hour stay at the pier or Narragansett Beach. As we fought against Prakashianti developers from putting up a massive street-level parking lot in Galilee, and we fought for a modern state library in the pier after many put up false narratives by failing to represent the truth and the will of the people, the residents of Narragansett hope The town council will not listen to the false narratives of a small number of vocal residents that will forever create more sign pollution in Narragansett that will make Narragansett Pier more unwelcoming to many. Let us think of our brothers and sisters in South Kingstown and all the non-residents who want to enjoy our beautiful beach without having to be time limited in fear of getting a parking ticket.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public who did not sign up wishing to speak? Ms. Ciliberto?
Catherine Ciliberto, 48 Oaks Court. I sent you an email about this. Seems the South Kingston Town Council voted to accept a memorandum of agreement with the town of Narragansett, obligating us to pay 30% of the South Kingston Senior Center costs. I'd like to know when the heck this happened, who signed this memorandum, who was involved in the discussions, what is 30% of the cost. I thought we were at the point where we were going to poll our seniors and ask them why they would go, why were they going to the South Kingston Senior Center, and attempt to get these services for our seniors at our own senior center. It seems we've bypassed that. We've just gone to a memorandum of agreement with South Kingston obligating us to pay 30% of the senior center costs. Now, I probably don't realize this, but the town, well, I'm sure you all know, we get CDBG grants. And South Kingston applied for $500,000. That's a max you can apply for. I don't know why we don't apply for it, but anyway, $250,000 of that was to do over all the parking at the senior center, new entrance and everything. If they don't get that $250,000, are we obligated to 30% of that? There are no figures. I mean, I'm trying to get a copy of this memorandum to see if there are figures involved. I just think we're putting the cart before the horse. I don't think we should be involved in any type of memorandum of agreements obligating us to pay South Kingston's costs. We are two separate towns. We have to get over it. We've been two separate towns for hundreds of years, and I really resent them coming in and taking our money in plain English. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll just move on to new business at this point. So the first new business item comes from Parks and Recreation Department, and it is a motion to approve the partnership with Narragansett Parks and Recreation, Narragansett Lions Club, and Narragansett Chamber of Commerce in hosting Gansett Fest on September 15th, 16th, and 17th, 2023 at Veterans Memorial Park and Gazebo Park, and the initial expenditure of approximately $9,887.52 to cover upfront costs.
I'll move the motion.
Second?
Any discussion from the council?
Could we just have a little sort of roundup about why we're doing this way? It's different from the previous, years. We put together, I think, 3 different activities in this one weekend, which I think is great, actually. But I'm not sure that all of our residents understand that completely, so I think that would be really helpful.
Mr. Tierney, could you please address that?
Certainly. I would like Michelle to speak on this one as well. This is a new approach, for sure, and the funds taken in will be distributed between the 3 entities, and Michelle's crew negotiated it with the Lions Club and the Chamber, and I'd like to invite Michelle up to speak briefly on this.
Good evening. As you know, in years past, this event started as Gansett Days, and throughout town, there was many different happenings, whether it was nature walks, we had balloon rides, which unfortunately was a failure because of the wind, not a good thing to have in the town of Narragansett. So a lot of different activities, narrow river kayaks participated, so a lot of different things that people could participate in. Then, as the years passed, we moved to Gansett Days and Endless Summer Festival at the beach. It was a combined effort between the Narragansett Lions Club and Parks and Recreation, where we had a few bands playing at the beach in the Cabana Horseshoe. We'd have a tent, and also the selling of wine and liquor, and also food from the Lions Club. Last year, at the Calamari Festival, I admired the Chamber of Commerce's very beautiful tent, and I had a conversation with Peg Fredette, and I said, geez, that's a beautiful tent, and she said, yes, it's a very expensive tent. It was about $12,000. Unfortunately, that tent stayed up on Thursday with no activity, Friday with no activity, and then the Calamari Festival that Saturday. So I had been speaking to Peg about that event, and then speaking with Sue Wright from the Narragansett Lions Club, and we said, hey, you know, it would be nice if we could all use that tent and kind of get away from having the tent at the beach, because having the tent installed at the beach was an extra additional cost, which was outside of the contract for that. Also, we felt that the particular event that happened at the beach, we were losing some money because people would come, they would stay outside and sit outside of the event area, and we were losing money that way. They were enjoying the show, which is great, but again, we found that we weren't taking in the revenue that we had hoped. So over the late summer and fall, I had a few meetings with Peg and Sue Wright, and we said, hey, why can't we just have everything on one particular weekend instead of having the Calamari Festival on one weekend and then Gansett Days Endless Summer on another? Why don't we collaborate together? All of us were in agreement to do that, and hence that's why we're here today. So Gansett Days is still going to be occurring. There'll be a lot of activities throughout town, and I'll have that document and brochure to you for the next meeting. And then we will have children's activities in Gazebo Park. Our Parks and Recreation tent will be set up there, and we'll have a lot of activities there. Touch a Truck will be on the Saturday as well in Gazebo, while Calamari Festival is going on next door at Veterans Memorial Park. And under the tent, we will have our 3 bands. So Hey 19 will be playing Friday evening. The Pogs will be playing Saturday, followed by Take It to the Bridge. There will be adult beverage services as well as food trucks. And hopefully it'll be a very good time and the weather will cooperate. So again, it was a collaboration to kind of share the costs, but keep it kind of within budget from where we were spending before. I know previously there was an agenda several months ago about the cost for Hey 19 and Take It to the Bridge that evening, because those bands cost over $2,500. The Pogs is not as high. So again, the Parks and Recreation Department will be covering the cost of the bands as well as the porta-johns and a couple of, all of the children's activities. And then the Chamber will be conducting the Calamari Festival and keeping all proceeds as they normally would. And what happens under the tent with the $10 admission charge and also the beer and wine sales, we hope to have that revenue divided between the Parks and Recreation Department to help offset the cost of the bands, because the bands total $8,800. And again, the other half would, of course, go towards the Lions Club.
Thank you. Great explanation.
Yeah.
You're very much welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the council at this point? Or do you want to go to the public? I'll go to the public now. Ms. Siliberto, you're all set. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kershaw.
Catherine Siliberto, 48 Earls Court. I guess you got a copy of all the back and forth. Every time there was a back and forth, I learned one new thing. This is a problem with these motions. They don't give you all the explanation. They only tell you so much. Okay, so now the Parks and Recreation is going to pay for the bands. Lions Club is not, correct? Yeah. Okay, so I can understand where Parks and Recreation would split the cost of the bands with the Lions Club. What I object to, again, is splitting the proceeds with a charity. I understand, like I say, the Lions Club paying some of the costs, but They should just get the proceeds, end of story. The Chamber's getting all the proceeds from the Calamari Festival. We're not splitting their proceeds with them. Why are we splitting proceeds with a charity? Is this even legal? It's not really moral. We never, you have my email, we've never asked for every charity road race, do we ask for part of the proceeds? When St. Thomas used to have those carnivals there, do we ask for part of the proceeds? We never asked for part of the proceeds from charities. Why are we asking for part of the proceeds for the Lions Club? They are going to use their money to do good in this town. The Parks and Rec decided to have a Lollapalooza, and it costs money, and that's that. And I feel they should just pay for it. And proceeds from a charity should never be split with a town. Doesn't make any kind of sense to me. Thank you. We're not so poor anyway that we can't just let them have the proceeds. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to comment? Anyone from the council? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion by Councilor Siciliano, seconded by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Next up from Public Works Department, we have a motion to approve the one-year contract extension for street sweeping, disposal, and miscellaneous trucking services for Public Works with Rambone Disposal Service at their bid prices under the same terms and conditions as the previous contract.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Next, from the Community Development Department, we have a motion to read, pass, and adopt as a second reading an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 731 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled An Ordinance in Relation to Zoning, as it relates to text revisions to various sections of the zoning ordinance to comply with recent authorization by the electorate for the retail sale of cannabis and cannabis products.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
We have 2 noes? Okay. Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 3-2. Next up is a motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance in the amendment of Chapter 731 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled An Ordinance in Relation to Zoning, as it relates to text and mapping of Section 5.5 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, entitled Zoning, for the purpose of adding a new historic district zone, 170 Clark Road, the Camp.
I'll move the motion.
Second?
First reading, any discussion from the council? We had this as a public hearing in the last meeting.
Well, I just was wondering if we had any interest again in the idea of providing that 2,500 square foot plot, whatever you call it, for the Windmill Building and the Narragansett Historical Society.
So that would be that red dotted line.
The red dotted line.
Red dotted line, yeah. I would be in favor of including that.
Yeah, it's better than nothing, absolutely. So I would be in favor of that.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing about that. I did actually go visit the Windmill Building last week, and it is kind of an amazing building in many, many ways. And I asked specifically, I met with Dr. O'Neill, and I asked specifically, what land it was. And it's a pretty good sized parcel, but the objective was to utilize that parcel as frequently as possible for a wide variety of things, including potential powwow with the Narragansett tribe, including other methods to raise funds for the Narragansett Historical Society, but also to be available to Parks and Rec. So with the town council always having the final determination as to what to do with the land. I know that there was some concern about that, particularly by the planning board, but I really feel that issue is moot, and I think it would be a beneficial thing to do.
I agree. Mark, would we have to amend the lease with this?
I would have to take a look at the lease.
Can we continue a first reading, like to the next meeting?
It sounds like you might want to amend it.
Or just amend it?
I mean, you could amend it, pass it, subject to adherence to the lease, and then if it needs to be amended, authorize me to amend the lease to, a way to facilitate that.
So can we do that?
You can do, I was fine with it the way it was, and.
Me as
fine.
well, I agree.
I was with
We
it.
went back and forth on that, and
I
we got
know.
a compromise, I thought, and it was a recommendation from the planning board, and I was good with that. I felt like we could pass that, so I'd like to move forward with that, to be honest with you.
Okay, so can we-
I
Go ahead, Steve, I'm sorry.
I agree with the change. I mean, I would say, why wouldn't it be included? I did vote no on the motion not to have that, so, and there wasn't an opportunity at that time to kind of have that included in, so.
Okay,
I
so
agree
it
with the
sounds like we
change
have-
as well, yeah.
Okay, so it's going to be a 3 to it, so we can, somebody needs to make a motion to amend.
So I
would
will
you like
make
to
the
make that?
motion to amend the ordinance to include the 2,500 square feet that had been identified in the map to be utilized in conjunction with the windmill building for the Narragansett Historical Society. That's way too many words, I'm sorry.
And it's 25,000?
25,000,
Yeah.
did I say 2,500?
Okay, do I have a second on that amended motion?
I'll second that.
Did you get that, Janet? I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, so we have an amended motion. Well, actually, since it's amended, we have to go to the public. So we have any, I see Ms. Celeberto's hand up.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. The original motion, the original ordinance was to make the whole area a voluntary district and only regulate the buildings. That's all. Now, I live in a voluntary district, let me tell you. It's not worth the paper it's written on. There is nobody who's lived in that district, including the people who own the Sherry cottages, who've ever gone to the Narragansett Historic Commission to get any kind of permission for anything. So again, the initial proposal was to make the whole area a voluntary district and only the buildings to be regulated. We went way off the track here, way off the track. We started piecemealing out pieces and little sections. Now we're going to add another section, which I approve of if that's all we can do. But we've just gone so far off track. There is no other district in this town that is piecemealed like this. This is absurd. But you want to go with it, go with it. And I agree, at least add the 25,000 near the windmill building. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, anyone else from the council? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No?
No, I'm going with the team on that.
Okay.
I would have preferred the original, but
I know.
I'm going to support it so it's complete. And we
Okay.
have some historic.
Okay, so motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 4-1. Next up, we have a motion to introduce. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second. No, I did one.
I have that amended motion.
Yep, so we have an amended motion by Counselor Kopek, seconded by Counselor Lawler. Motion passes, motion to amend passes 4-1. Now we go back to the original motion, which is a motion to approve as amended. Actually, no, it was the amendment was, motion to amend was 5-0. Next was, we go back to the main motion to approve the motion as amended.
No. Motion to amend was 4-1.
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to keep it original.
I just
Yeah,
wanted
so motion, yep.
So you want to go back to the original motion?
So then the main motion as amended is what vote?
It was 4-1.
So both votes were 4-1.
Yes. Okay, next from the engineering department, we have a motion to approve a change order for the pump station wet well cleaning contract with Inland Waters LLC in the amount of $27,750.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a motion to approve the filling of one vacancy within the wastewater division due to a resignation.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next up, we have from the town clerk's office is the motion to approve a Class B victualler limited alcohol license for Narragansett Casino LLC, doing business as Narragansett Casino, located at 11 Pier Marketplace, Narragansett, Rhode Island.
I'll move the motion.
Second?
Okay. I'm going to actually ask our town solicitor. We've listened to the public hearing just for some information or advice.
Thank you. So there was a lot of information brought forward today and this evening. As you're aware, abutters within that 200-foot zone filed objections late this afternoon. That solicited a response from Narragansett Casino's counsel addressing the objections. And in the short amount of time I had between receiving those objections and the correspondence, I read as many decisions as I could that DBR has issued, along with the cases that were cited by counsel for Narragansett Casino. It's not surprising that the statute is not black and white. Very few are, but it was cited twice by both sides tonight, and that is Rhode Island General Law, Chapter 7, Section 3-7-19. And the language, to me, is clear and unambiguous with regard to what you can and cannot do. The question then becomes, do you have the information that binds you to that? So I'll just read you the language that I think is most important. So it says, retailers Class B, C, N, and I licenses, and any license provided for in Section 3-7-16.8 shall not be issued to authorize the sale of beverages in any building where the owner of the greater part, interesting term there, of the land within 200 feet of any point of the building files with the body or official having jurisdiction to grant licenses his or her objection to the granting of the license. So when these types of matters have come before us with this particular property in the past, I have stated that we would rely on those documents that were recorded. Notwithstanding the litigation, there's a lot of litigation between the parties, and we have been consistent in not getting involved in that litigation. So sticking to the documents that are on file, I don't think there's any question that Beachcomber Properties owns the land. Now, some of it's subject to a lease, but nonetheless, they're the landowner. They're within the 200-feet buffer, as is the controlling entity for Trio. So they had submitted objections, as is required by this statute. And they submitted this report from Josh Rosen, setting forth that they, based on their calculation, own a majority. And it's interesting because the language says the greater part of the land. Most of the decisions that I read refer back to a majority. although there were I hadn't reviewed any cases that were like close. It was either the majority or it was like 33%. So in this, they assert that they own 52%, which would be the greater part of the land. I believe they're the landowners based on the deeds. And the question about whether the land under the building constitutes land for calculation purposes, I had not seen that in a single decision. I had not seen that topic come up. So based on what has been provided, based on the statute, and knowing that no matter what decision is made tonight, this is going to be appealed to DBR. And when it gets appealed to DBR, it's de novo, meaning it starts from scratch. Evidence is presented to DBR. And DBR is not obligated to consider any information that we have on the record. So having said that, I believe that Section 3-719, subsection A applies, and the town shall not issue the license. So I don't even think you need to get to parking at this point or change of use. I think the section applies, in my opinion.
Any comments or questions from the council? Yeah, we can go to the public.
I think based on what the solicitor said, we're in a difficult spot, but the advice is not to go forward with the license.
So we heard both sides, and with all due respect to the solicitor, I'm going to support the motion to grant the license.
I think we can go to the public. We can.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone from the public? Dr. Alba.
We're not going to get in the middle of that.
Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace. As you know, I've been involved with the battle in Galilee since pretty much its inception. I've been reviewing legal briefs of all the lawyers now, which it's really an interesting play, but it's been a learning experience. And that land in Galilee is leased land. And when I first saw the lease, I requested it, I got a copy of this lease, and I saw that it stated by the lease, the leaseors, they had requirements on what should be on, they're given PRIX, the property. PRIX bought the lighthouse in Dutch Inn, but they were required to abide in its operations. They were required to maintain. So they couldn't change it to some other kind of establishment. It was a hotel, and they couldn't make it a gasoline station or something else. So I feel that when this, I didn't see the lease, which the leaseors drawn up, but it should clearly state, if we look at that, exactly what was granted or not granted to these individuals. So I don't know if our town solicitor looked at that, but if it did not state that, make that provision saying that, yes, you can use it for this kind of establishment, and they're changing from the original outset, well, that in itself should say, you can't just change the lease. You can't change the statutes of the lease. So I just wanted to share that all with you. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Anyone else from the council wishing to?
Well, I'd just like to clarify, this isn't a lease situation. The folks own the property in which they want to obtain a liquor license, so I think it's a very different situation. And listening to Mr. Pugh earlier, I mean, we're talking about a liquor license. So I can't wrap my head around all of this issue as far as the land underneath the building, but I don't understand why we're having such a difficult time with this.
Anyone else?
Scott Hallberg. So I think it's the exact same situation as Galilee. The state owns the land, and whomever it was owns the improvements. I think it's the same. How is it not different?
I'm not an attorney. I'm not
The
answering this
underlying
what we're
land
doing.
is owned by me, Beachcomber.
If I may, what I was explaining about the statute really has nothing to do with the lease. We don't need to get into the lease. This statute gives you the granting authority. It says you shall not issue the license if there are abutters that object, which they have, and they own the greater part of the land, which they have. So my analysis didn't go to the lease. As I said, we were not going to get mirrored in the lease. It's not our issue. This is not dependent upon parking. It's not dependent upon change of use. This is a plain reading of this particular statute. And with all due respect to Mr. Pugh, the statute's the statute. It's not a discretionary thing. So that's the explanation. You can choose to ignore it. Like I said, for all practical purposes, it doesn't even matter because it's going to be appealed to DBR by the losing side. But that's the statute. Now, you can argue they're not landowners. You can argue they're not within the 200-foot buffer. You can argue they don't own the greater part of the land. You can decide that based on the documents you have. But I wouldn't be so cavalier as to dismiss the statute.
Any other comments from the council?
My comment.
Okay.
I'll speak. I think it's
Okay,
another member
sure.
of the public wants to speak.
Oh, sure, Ms. Siliberto.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. I don't know why these two parties haven't sat down and tried to work something out. This is absurd, really, absurd. You have one person owns a building, another person owns the land, and they're just butting heads. There's absolutely no attempt at all to try to work something out. And maybe somebody should ask them why. What is going on here, really? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the council? Okay. Mr. Ferrandi, you're all set? Okay.
All set.
So I actually, I do want to see things in the pier. I want to see businesses in the pier. I want to see things succeed. This has been such a very convoluted public hearing. There was like good efforts from one side and the other side. Of course, when it really comes down to the statute, that's what it really comes down to is the definitive language in there. And we do have our solicitor for advice. I'm not a lawyer, and I always rely on experts to kind of guide me in that process. And I know that we are the licensing body here. But again, when there's like such strong language and the statute reads so clearly, I'm going to have to say no, not approve this because I know it's going to be in litigation. It's going to go to DBR. It's going to come back. So for that reason, I'm going to have to vote no on this one.
I also do not have a law degree, so I'm going to rely on my solicitor's advice.
Okay. Kind of disappointed that I had to do that. But anyway, so the motion is to approve a Class A victual limited license, alcohol license for Narragansett Casino LLC doing business as Narragansett Casino, located 11 Pier Marketplace, Narragansett, Rhode Island. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
Motion fails 2-3. It was motioned by Counselor Sicily Bonanno, seconded by Counselor Kopak. Next up, we have a motion to approve a new victualler license application for PJ Coffee LLC, doing business as Coffee and Bagel Connection South, located at 855 Point Judith Road, Narragansett, Rhode Island, subject to local and state regulations.
So moved.
Second?
Any comments from the council? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, seconded by Counselor Kopak. Motion passes 5-0. Last on the agenda from the Town Council is a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the Town of Narragansett to enter into a loan agreement with the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank to finance a roof-mounted solar photovoltaic system and level 2 electric vehicle charger at the Maury Luntjens Memorial Library, and to issue bonds or notes in an amount not to exceed $260,000.
I'll move the motion.
Second?
Okay, so this is a motion. So as we all know, the library board is appointed by the council, and so I was asked by the board chair to put on this agenda item for this loan. And the May 1st meeting, we had approved to move forward with the application for this loan application. And it was actually approved. So it's going to be, it's jointly run by Rhode Island Office of Energy Resources and Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. And it's going to finance a roof-mounted solar photovoltaic system, as well as a level 2 electric vehicle charger capable of charging 2 electric vehicles at the library. And then so the library applied for the loan in June of 2023. The application, as I said, was received and approved. So this resolution is going to be to authorize the town to issue a request for proposal to select a vendor to install roof-mounted solar photovoltaic system and level 2 electric vehicle chargers, solar panels, and electric vehicle charging stations at the Maury Luntjens Memorial Library. It's going to be a loan of up to $260,000 and would be a low-cost loan from the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, and the loan is payable solely from projected energy savings and the library appropriation. Once the project is complete, applications for state and federal grants will also be submitted. Funds collected will be used to pay down the loan balance. So basically, this is to purchase solar equipment to generate the library's own electricity, and payments come out of the operating budget. So that's going to be the same cost to the library budget, and there's no increase to taxpayers. Any discussion from the council?
I can go. Did you want to say something, Steve?
Yeah, I have some.
Mr. Frandy?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Eva. I understand the idea of the solar energy and, the library getting rebuilt and all, but I don't see how we went from the Cadmus Group was basically the only, and I guess it was a consultants, and I don't really see that report. There was never actually any blue sheets, but how we went from the Cadmus Group's idea of what we should need with the charging stations and all, and going out to bid for an RFP. We don't even know what the payback is, how long the loan is, what the interest is. There's a lot of details missing. I'm not to say I'm not for the solar energy, but, I just think there's a lot of pieces missing in this at this point about the payback and the loan. And it says something about the, it's a bond or notes. So how does it affect our credit? Should we be looking at other buildings? How come just a library has this on at the latest moment? And I just think there's a little more information in these sheets that we can go out with an RFP already. And is the Cadmus Group going to be actually, putting an application in for the RFP also? think this is a little
Yeah,
bit
so,
too, I don't know
so
who can
Mr.
answer the
Frandy,
questions.
so
I'm
there's no effect on our bond rating with this. This is a low, this allows the library to take a low-cost loan, and it's going to be, they're going to pay with their savings. So it's, like I mentioned in this, on the blue sheet, that it's not going to really be an increase.
But what I'm getting at is there's nothing, everybody says it's not going to happen. Where is the schedule of what the paybacks are? How is it going to get paid back? Are there any more details than just a, you know,
Ms.
Yeah.
Kelly wants to speak.
Okay,
it'd be
sure.
nice to
Ms.
see that,
Kelly,
just to
would
see
you like
where
to
we're
speak
at.
on?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Are you, I'm sorry, are you?
that's all right.
Okay, did you have any, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you. So basically, this is the resolution, and it's just like when we had a resolution for the 5.8 million. It just gives us the authority, the town council is giving us the authority to go forward with this project. The $260,000 is a high estimate because it's difficult to come back and adjust it upwards. The estimate from Cadmus, our technical consultant, was about $236,000 that we would borrow. Obviously, if it's $200,000, we borrow less. The bond counsel is David Ferrara. He's looking at, the yield curve right now is very flat between 7 and 15 years. So we don't know if we're going to take 15-year paper or 7-year paper, and that affects the amortization of the loan. But even at 7 years for, the $200,000, that would be paid back through our already appropriated budget. So again, a lot of people in town, I know, Deb, you have solar, you're either paying the electric company or you're buying your equipment to create your own electricity. This is a mandate by the state. They're really excited to, get as many towns to have electric vehicle chargers and solar panels. And, we happen to have a very good roof, which we just replaced. We had engineering studies on it. And the estimated federal and state grants are estimated to be about $100,000. So we might end up with just $100,000 that we're paying back over the life of this, loan. There's no payment schedule because we haven't chosen that. And again, that's for the administration, Chris Wilson and David Ferrara to figure out what's the best bond. So.
And then you come back to us with that information, right?
Right, and the RFP goes out, it's very technical, we still have the technical consultant on board because, Deb, I don't know if you had other vendors when you did your house, but there are people use different charging stations and they use different solar panels. So we're gonna have to evaluate, hopefully 10 different programs to figure out which we're going to choose. But that RFP is, going down we're working on it hard and should come out third or fourth quarter this year.
Do you have any details, or are the details in the RFP similar to the Cadmus Group's presentation as far as, how many solar panels we're having? There was a couple of different kinds of EV chargers, a higher end, a lower end. Are we going to charge the customers that
Yes, we
use
are.
the EV?
Yep.
Because basically what we're getting the town to do is they're going to be in, let's say, a future gas station, because that's what, if everything goes well, it's going to be fine. And is the
Right.
town regulated, allowed to be selling,
Sure. Sure, we don't have
And
to give
everything's
away our
wide open.
electricity for free, and I know there was a discussion of the police having,
I just want to make sure the town's regulated for that, all of that. I just wish I saw a little more details as far as, what's entailed in it, rather than just
well,
it
I
seems
think
like
that
it's
the
moving pretty
details
quick.
would be in the RFP. Well, because we had an application pending and it was accepted, we have to move to grab that money. So that's why the resolution gives us the chance to go out with the RFP, and then you'll see a lot more details.
Maybe you could
coming
get some
back.
estimates on possible what the rate is, possible, it's not going to, we're not going to be paying it back over 30 years. So just a
It's
few.
7 to 15
few
years.
scenarios,
And
right?
the interest rate right now, and that part of the curve is about 5%.
Yeah, just so the public would be able to see it.
Anything else?
Anyone from the public?
Thanks, Lori.
Actually, let me ask Mr. Tierney.
It's anticipated, our finance director, Christine Wilson, that the project cost, the original project cost that Laura referenced is correct, the 236. And in discussion with bond counsel, 260 was the number that they came up with because of potential change orders or fluctuations in price. And it appears to be that probably the term of the note will most likely be 15 years with an estimated rate of about 3.5%.
That's good.
But that's until the ink is on the paper. Till the ink's on the paper, we won't know. But that's the projection.
Okay, Dr. Alba.
Yes, Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace. As you know, I have a couple of pages, the Narragansett Forum page, the Town page. So when things come up like this, people shoot me information. And they have questions. So I think Mr. Ferendi's on target. I agree with them. I agree with his questioning. We also have concerns about the efficacy and life expectancy of these quick charging stations. Some of them have been very problematic. So the upkeep, and we're not in the gasoline business, it's the library. I mean, this has to be precedent setting for our first library in the United States of America
No, it's not.
to have a, charge for pay. I mean, is it even legal for us to do that? We didn't see the amortization schedule. We didn't see the interest rates. We didn't see the payback. We didn't have, one of the things about solar energy and going green, it's upcoming. There's initiatives. There's initiatives in different cities that are getting 100% back. They don't have to take out a loan. They have Senator Reid going to Washington, giving them the millions of dollars or whatever it might be. Not a cent. So why do we have to pay a cent? If President Biden, if he wants us to go green, great. But let's not spend 1 cent out of our pocket. Let's not take out any loan. We're going green. It's a matter of time. I don't have an EV. How many people have an EV? I mean, I don't plan on having an EV if I don't have to. I plan on keeping my car until I die or it dies. So that's how I feel. I just don't feel that we should be spending money on something which very small percentage of the people are going to be utilizing. I don't think Stan Wojciechowski would be very happy about this. Stan, we miss you. Okay, so in any event, Mr. Ferendi, I do agree with your points. I think this has to be researched out a lot more. And we can wait. The technology is always changing. It's getting better. It's always getting better. So if we wait a little while longer, we don't have to be, we saw the Kurt Schilling deal. We were first on board. It ended up burning us. Are we the first library in the United States of America that's having a charging station? Okay, thank you very much, and I hope you consider what I had to say.
Ms. Amoroso?
Susan Amoruso, 111 West Bay Drive. First of all, many libraries have charging stations. Many libraries have their parking lots, their buildings covered in solar. Actually, Newton, Mass. Just expanded theirs. And solar is not new. My panels on my house are the older version. I've had them for 12 years. I didn't do it with how much money am I going to get back? I did it for the planet. And a side interest is I have paid $10 to the electric company in all those years. So, and we don't even have a lot of panels because they restricted us to what we used at the time. And because the library is a warming and cooling center, the regulations, it's a public building, we're able to cover the whole roof. This is a win-win situation. The library is not going to have an electric bill. It's going to help pay off the loan. And it's not is it going to work? It works. And Rhode Island is going green reluctantly. And ask any homeowner that got on board with the South Kingston, North Kingston, Narragansett Collaborative. They gave lower prices. Every single person is saying, God, I wish I did this sooner. Do you realize I don't have an electric bill? Do you realize I've built up a credit? Yeah, I do. And sometimes we should just do things because it's the right thing. And obviously, the weather lately, tornadoes up in the northern part of the state. I mean, we need to help reduce our energy consumption. And this is the perfect opportunity. And having charging stations, there aren't these widespread problems. You know, it's just a win-win situation. So I can personally say, and I have solar hot water too. Never regretted it, and it's never had any maintenance. So it's maintenance-free. I had it checked because, 10 years. Guy says, everything's fine, everything's working. So it just keeps on rolling. So this is one of the best things about our library that we could do for the town and our planet.
Ms. Ciliberto.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. Everything that has been said is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is, to get OLS reimbursement, we have to build a green building. Has anybody read the rules? I'm really wondering. We have to build a green building to get OLS reimbursement. What do people not understand about this? I guess this is part of the building a green building. Don't know a lot about green buildings. But I don't know that you have a choice. Now, my next concern is, how much is the interest rate? Is this a loan or a bond? That's all you have to really address. How much is this going to cost us? What's the cheapest way we can get out of this? But you really don't have a choice because OLS reimbursement depends on building a green building. Thank you.
Any other comments from the council? There's no one hands up. Anyone from the public wishing to speak? Anyone else? Seeing none, any final comments from the council?
Well, I agree with the comments that Steve made, and I did speak with a finance director about this, because my question is, how will the library be reimbursing us? And she said what Lori also stated tonight would be coming from the allocation, from the operating allocation that the library has. I'm concerned about the fact that it's a capital project, but they're using operation money for a capital project. That just shouldn't be. So that having said, I can't see why we should rush into this. I agree with what Dr. Alba just said. Technology is changing. And I agree with what Catherine just said, that the green energy is an important thing, but it's in our future. And we do have the time to wait on this project and put this project on a slate maybe a few years from now when the technology might be better and less expensive, and there may be more grant opportunities out there for us. So, hey, I voted against helicopter rides tonight because I want to take a look at every dime that Narragansett's spending. And for the same reason, I can't vote for this because I can't see the town taking on additional debt that we don't need right now. We can wait on this.
Okay, all set? All right, take a vote. Since everyone's done with any comments. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
No. Okay, motion by Councilor Siciliani Badano, seconded by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 3-2. Next is a motion to adjourn.
Move the motion.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Siciliani Badano, seconded by Councilor Ferrandi. Motion passes 5-0. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Eva.